Alright, so by now you should have a pretty good idea of what this spreadsheet does. Now let's talk about how to use it. We'll start by looking at the budget worksheet. On the left, you have what is called your monthly budget. This is where you will be setting your budget. On the right, you have the year. Simply type in the current year here. For me, that's 2021. Just beneath that, there are projected yearly amounts. And as you add data over here on the left, these cells will start to fill with data. So the first thing you should do is add an amount to revenue. The budget does not factor in taxes, so this should be your net monthly pay. And for simplicity, there's only one revenue category, so make sure you factor in any form of revenue. For this illustration, let's say I have an annual income of about $25,000, and after taxes I take home about $20,000. After including a few other sources of income, such as Christmas money, for example, I estimate I'll earn about $24,000 a year. Finally, I'll divide this number by 12, and that gives me an estimate of $2,000 a month, which I will enter here. Okay, that's step one. Now, as you can see, the projected yearly amount fills in here, and that just gives you another way to look at your budget if you prefer to see the yearly amounts. Okay, so now let's talk about expenses. As you can see, there are 4 columns: category, description, prepaid, and amount. The category column simply assigns a number to each expense category. You will use this number to assign a transaction to a category when you input data, and this is how the spreadsheet calculates everything. So when you add another category, a second expense category that is, this is just going to go to number 3 and then number 4 and so on. So again, this will autofill in for you. The description, that's simply what you choose to call the category, and the amount, of course, is the budgeted monthly amount you plan to spend in that category. I'll explain the prepaid column in a moment. Remember in the last video when I said this spreadsheet was customizable? Well, here's why. You get to pick your own categories. And as you add categories, they are autofilled throughout the rest of the spreadsheet, and the formatting will update as well. You'll see how in just a second. Alright, so let's add our first category. Rent would be a great example. So I'm going to type rent in the description. Again, a category number is already assigned to it. And let's put the amount at, say, $500. The projected yearly amount would be $6,000. Okay, great. First category is done. The next category I'll add down here in this cell, and let's call it car repairs. For an amount, let's put $100. $1,200 a year sounds about right. But wait a second. There's a difference between these two categories, right? Think about it. If you're renting a house, you pay that every single month. You're going to spend $500 on rent every month, and that's not going to change. Car repairs are different, however. Are you going to have to repair your car every month? Probably not. In fact, you might not have to repair your car at all this year, which would be great. However, on the other hand, something could go wrong, and you might have a big expense that you weren't prepared for because it could happen at any time. As you learned in the previous video series, this is part of why a budget is so important. There will be expenses, like car repairs, that you will eventually have to pay for even though they aren't a monthly expense. Because of this, it is important to save for them, and a budget helps you do this. Remember, your savings should be treated like other expenses. So, this is where the prepaid expense column comes in. When you put a Y here in this column, it means you are designating this category as a prepaid expense, and you'll put aside a certain amount of money each month to save for this expense. So for car repairs, let's say we want to set aside a total of $1,200 a year. That means we need to save about $100 a month. So again, since we're considering this a prepaid expense category, we're going to put a Y here. And again, we're going to be saving $100 a month in this category. So rather than waiting until we have a big expense hit during a random month and hoping we have enough money in the bank account to pay for it, it's better to save a little bit each month so that you're always prepared. Okay, I know that was a lot of information, but this is probably the most important aspect of the spreadsheet. If you get this down, it will be easy from here on out. Just remember that there are two different expense categories. The first is a normal expense, such as rent. Food would be another example. If you budget $150 for food per month and only spend $100, it has no impact on the next month. You reset on the first of the month and you're only going to need to spend about $150 food that month, despite what you spent the previous month. The other type of expense category is a prepaid expense in this budget. Car repairs is a great example. Gifts might be another one. Why? Well, you'll probably spend a lot more on gifts in December because of Christmas. So marking this category as prepaid allows you to save throughout the year for this expense, and it essentially evens out the hit. It is as if you are prepaying for this expense a little at a time. Any expense that is not consistent on a month-to-month basis should be marked as a prepaid category. I hope that all made sense. It can be a little confusing at first, but it is important that you understand this. If you are able to effectively distinguish between these types of categories, you should have no problem creating your budget and using the spreadsheet. Okay, back to the spreadsheet here for just a couple more points. As I briefly mentioned, in order to designate a category as a prepaid expense, put a Y. So we have that. To leave it as a normal category, such as rent, which is a normal category, you can either put an N, or you can leave it blank. Your choice. Now you may notice there's a savings category here. So let's say if you make $2,000 a month and you budget a total of $1,800 in expenses, you would project to save $200 a month. Savings is simply how much money you have left over after your expenses are covered. Just that simple. Also, it's worth mentioning that savings is a general category. It's not set aside for any particular purpose. If you have something specific you're wanting to save for, just put it in here as a prepaid expense. Savings just indicates leftover money that you can use however you wish. Finally, I want to mention a couple technical aspects of this worksheet. I built this spreadsheet to be able to handle up to 100 categories. It won't let you go over that, but you should never need to. And up to 50 of those categories can be prepaid categories. Lastly, I used a lot of what is called data validation in this spreadsheet. Basically, it limits the type of data you can input in each cell in order to help keep everything straight. For example, I can only put a Y or an N in this prepaid column. Anything else is going to result in an error. So let's do a number. And you'll notice you get an error. So this is just to help guide you and keep everything straight. And you will find data validation throughout the spreadsheet. Again, just to help you make sure you're putting the correct data in each cell. I did want to point that out in case the error seemed confusing. And that's all I have for this video. If everything in this video made sense, it will be smooth sailing from here. When you're ready, the next video is called Tracking Expenses.